Good to see you, man.
Good to see you. Good to see you.
It's been a minute. I don't think I've seen you physically in the flesh since 2017.
I think it was 18, but no,
Was it?
yeah, it had to be because you came to Northern Virginia where I was living and we got coffee.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
remember?
That's right. That's right. Okay. Yes, yes. That's true.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you are
And hey, I'll
correct.
tell you when that was right after I left the church world, and I don't know if I ever told you, but that actually really meant a lot to me because nobody
Yeah.
else wanted anything to do with me to have any conversations at all.
Well, you were always a friend to me when we were in Spain, and so I thought,
Well, I
man,
was
you
just
know
using
what?
you.
Well, okay. A true story. Listen, true story. Um,
Okay.
I believe it was in 2012. We were together at a meeting in Belleville, Illinois.
Oh
Okay.
man, you okay? Wow, you were going way back.
Yes, and Belleville, Illinois, and uh, we were talking about something, and we were talking about text messaging on the iPhone, and I had just gotten a smartphone for the first time or something like that, and you
That sounds
showed me
about
how
right.
to do the swipe text option. I had never seen that before.
Wow. It's
Yeah.
it's always nice to know that you made a lasting impact on someone's life. You
With
know.
something so meaningful,
Yeah.
with something so
I mean,
important.
was your life? Yeah, your life was
Oh,
never the same.
my life has been enriched thoroughly on account of that piece of knowledge. But
Yeah.
no, man. But no, listen. I honestly am glad you agreed to have this conversation, and it is an interview, of course. I want to ask you some questions. But just to kind of let everybody know who might be watching this later on the socials, is it's kind of got a little bit of a structure. All right, not too structured because I want it to feel authentic, but at the same time, uh, to go from your story, as much or as little as you'd like to share, your journey, your experiences, um, coming from and we come from similar backgrounds, so I think it's very relatable here for me.
We're both white
But
trash. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, that's it. Yeah, yeah, pretty much. I did one of those ancestry studies recently, and it's all Northern Europe, mostly
Yeah.
Scotland,
It
which
just
is
came
pretty
back
dope.
all caps cracker. Yeah. That's
Yeah,
all it said.
that's it. That's it. But so I want to hear, your story and your, journey from where it was coming out of the church world to where you are now. And just to kind of maybe give a bit of a teaser, would it be fair to say that you define yourself today as a believing agnostic?
That's the term that I usually use just because
Okay.
I have no idea.
Well, and don't give away too much of it. I want you to be able to elaborate on that later on. But
Okay.
because if somebody hears it, they're kind of like, well, okay, what is that? And I appreciate, honestly, I do appreciate your candor and being able to put a label on your worldview, essentially, where you're at right now. And in like form, I mean, obviously, I'm not that. I'm a Christian. Very much Christian in the Reformed stream of Christianity, Reformed Protestant type. So anyway, I want to hear about how where you came from to what got you to where you are now, and then also after you kind of share where you're at now, to be able to ask you to questions, pointed questions about your worldview, and see how you can respond to that, to see what your thoughts are there. All
Yeah.
right.
I like it.
And it's and I think it goes without saying, but I want to say it, again, just for anybody watching, it's a good faith interview conversation. Um, we are friends from a long time ago, and life just happens, and you end up going your separate ways. So there's not any kind of like, this is not like an Andrew Wilson blood sport debate situation, which he's pretty much the goat at that, but that's not that's not what this is. So but at the same time, it's real, it's honest, and poignant because um, at the end of the day, truth can withstand the weight of scrutiny, and so if what anyone believes is true, they should have no problem explaining why that thing is true, and or defending it. So, um,
Well, I just think
but
it's kind of cute that you think that I'm not coming into it like a blood sport. I mean, you're just kind of
you
assuming.
can, I mean, you can, I
I'm coming for
suppose.
you. Yeah.
I mean, if you
No,
if
but
you
we'll
want,
have some of that because I know you and you know me. Like we like to debate. Like we have a good time with it. But I think
yeah,
it's so
yeah,
cool that people get to see, like you're saying, like we're friends that go back. You know, it's kind of crazy to
yeah,
think about though. Man, we've been friends for 14 years.
hmm,
That's wild. Anyway, yeah, but people who can have long, great relationships, really respect each other, love each other, and completely and vociferously disagree on a lot of
yeah,
stuff. I think that
yeah.
that's what we need in the world today more than anything.
Well, yes, and I think the art of debate, and it really is an art form. I think
Yes.
that that should be platformed, and people should be encouraged to know how to think critically, and then talk talk deeply about their beliefs, because the opposite end of that spectrum of being able to debate in a credible, intelligent, intellectual way. The other end of that is just, I mean, I think this is my opinion. I think the other end of
Violence.
that is exactly what I was going to say, is violence. And for me, back in October when Charlie Kirk was killed, I mean, dude, that left me gutted,
Yeah.
absolutely gutted. And
And he called it. He called it. He said when the dialogue ends, that's when the shootings begin.
and I don't want to leave a world to my children and their children where people suck at communication and conversation.
Well, I think
So
I really like the way that Stephen Fry put it. He said in his inimitable way that debate is the art of dancing gracefully with the truth, and
mhm,
that is
it's
a
good.
lot of things get called debate, and there's completely different categories of it. And I won't say that Andrew Wilson and those style of debates. Who am I thinking of? The English guy. Pierce Morgan, people who debate. I'm not going to say there's no place for that ever, but I do think like if that's the majority of your diet of debate,
Yeah.
you are malnourished. You are
Well,
malnourished.
and I think a lot of those guys do the debates the way they do them for clickables, for
Of
clickable
course,
pieces that could
it's
possibly go.
rage baiting. It's negative emotion farming. Yes.
And again, it's not to say that what they're saying is not accurate. It's just,
Hmm.
are they
What's the
engaging
intent behind it?
that way to make progress with the person that they're engaging, or is it just to get views? Um,
Yeah.
and naturally, I want to get views, so please like and subscribe. But that's not. I don't think that that's the number one priority,
It shouldn't be. It should
for
be. It should be
for
to
healthy
dance
debate.
gracefully with the truth, because, and we'll get to this when we get into kind of my current worldview. Is I think we need a much more humble as a species. I really think we need a much more humble approach and sense of awe when it comes to capital T truth, right?
Hmm.
Like if you don't come into it knowing your own weakness and your own fallacies and knowing how many times your own opinions have been wrong and how you've had to change,
Yeah.
to just assume, that you like you have this monopoly in full understanding on what truth is. That makes like I forget who said it. I'm sure you as a theologian you can tell me who said it. I can't remember. It may have been G.K. Chesterton, but he said any God that is small enough to understand is not large enough to worship.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's my. I try to make that my approach to truth, and anymore I'm very very cautious about which kinds of people I will have those conversations with. So I'm launching my own podcast in a couple of months, and that's the main reason behind it. Is like I'm going to curate what kind of conversations that I have, because some of them are productive and some of them absolutely are not.
Yeah, and I can
And if you're
understand.
not approaching it, yeah,
Well, I was just saying, I can understand too, like the entertainment aspect of when you want to get on and absolutely flame broil someone in a debate,
yeah,
maybe because they're being ignorant. And there are lots of ignorant people who want to just name call, use
and
logical
malicious
fallacy.
ignorant people. There are people who twist the truth intentionally. There's a lot of that.
And
Yeah,
I think with those
and they should
people,
be
and
called out.
this is the difference between the classical apologetics and presuppositional apologetics.
Yeah,
Where classically, you're going to engage with someone, maybe it's through a Socratic method, ask them questions to help them kind of think through different things. But then presuppositionally, it's less like, no, you're just an idiot, you're defiant, and you need to repent and believe the gospel. So shut up. And I like that second one a lot, but
of course you do.
it's not for every situation. But
Right.
so let me start out with this. I got a first opening question for you. Okay.
Okay, hit me, hit me.
All right. Why are you gay?
Why are you gay? Oh, I was just gonna ask you how observant you are. Did you check my background at all?
I can't see
You
it.
see my whiteboard? Oh, I
I mean,
should
I
have
could.
written it backward.
Oh
My
yeah.
whiteboard says Mike is gay.
Leave it. Leave it. Please leave it on there.
Why are you gay?
Leave it. Oh, he is so funny. That's such a
Yes.
classic clip. And then I follow him. His name's Simon something, and I follow him, and it never ceases to crack me up. Um, just that
Yes.
that African accent.
My
Uh,
brother, the devil is a liar.
you are gay. You are
You are gay.
homosexual. Do you fulfill natural obligations? It's like, oh my gosh.
Oh man.
Anyways, no. So okay, look. On all seriousness, tell me, like, okay, how did you? And like I said, you can dig deep into as much as little as you like. But I want to hear kind of where you came up, maybe even your family life as it relates to spirituality, as it relates to religion,
Mm, yeah.
and how that culminated into your professional career in Christian ministry, and then how that evolved into maybe where you're at today.
Yeah.
All right, so it's all you.
So I was born on a drizzly Tuesday. No. Um, uh, I do have a very, very weird backstory, probably to most people, a little bit more normal to you because you're a freak yourself.
Yeah.
Um, but my grandfather was a Southern Baptist pastor. My father grew up as a Southern Baptist, kid, teenager, and when he kind of had a rebellious stage, like many people do, and kind of was tired of the old, um, nonsensical things, the hypocrisy that he saw in super stiff organized religion, and ended up joining the military and got stationed in the Azore Islands in Portugal.
This is your
And there
dad.
was a yeah, and there was an independent fundamental Baptist church there, very charismatic, very Austin Gardner esque kind of missionary pastor there for the military, and he got pulled into that. And it's interesting. We have conversations, he and I, about that, and what it was that was attractive. Like, these were people who, you know, now he would look at a lot of the things that they do and say and oppose them. And he's definitely still a Christian. But the the feeling of there's something vibrant, there's real community going on. There are people who actually really believe what they say that they believe. That's very, very attractive to people who are coming out of dead sort of religion.
Yeah.
So anyway, sorry, this is probably going further back than you wanted, but all that
No.
to say that he actually ended up going back to the Azores as a church planting missionary for the independent fundamental Baptists. And
Wow.
so I went there. I grew up on deputation, which, for your listeners, if you don't know deputation, that's IFB, fundraising for missionaries. So you go, like, for me, deputation was like 2.5 years and preaching in 300 churches all the way across the states, which is how Mike and I met. We met at a church, both of us on
Yeah.
reputation, raising support to go start churches. So that's how I grew up. I grew up as a missionary kid. Went to the Azores when I was 5. So I grew up on a little island that was 5 miles wide and 50 miles long, 10,000 people, 20,000 cows. Most of the time, hard to tell the difference. Uh, no, just kidding. I love Azorians. I threw it out there for my brother-in-law because he's Azorian and he'll
Oh,
watch this and get mad.
yeah.
But so I grew up. I grew up in this little town called Caleta. Missionary kid. Very strict independent fundamental Baptist. Although it's weird. It's weird. Like I have to, and I've had to. I don't want to say deconstruct, but reintegrate a lot of those memories now and with the understanding and perspective that I have now. And that goes in phases. Like when I first got out of the church world, looking back on that, all I could think was, oh, I grew up in a cult. And yes and no. Yes and no, right? Because and my dad and I have had a lot of conversations about that he was not a cultist at all. My
Right.
dad is a very he and you would get along incredibly well, except for your personality.
Yeah.
But he's a very critical thinker. Always
Yeah.
taught me to think critically. Like I was always an extremely curious kid, annoyingly curious. Always like I have memories of being in his study at 5 6 years old and drinking the cold dregs out of his coffee cup and trying to read his theology books. And so but he always taught me how to think. Now we don't agree on everything,
Yeah.
but he wasn't a cultish sort of person and still isn't. However, the weird thing is, and he didn't realize this at the time either, because he was there with in that world with the best of intentions and trying to be very biblical and very scriptural. But what he didn't know at the time, which is completely understandable, is what influence that would have on his children being raised in that same environment, because he wasn't raised in like an IFB type of, and he always thought, okay, they have dumb standards and crazy ideas and stuff, but I don't have to be that way. And you understand, being as a missionary, that's kind of the subculture too with most IFB missionaries. It's like, okay, all the crazies that send us money every month, they're locked in their own little dumb world. And but I can be as open as the spirit leads me to be, and I'm just trying to follow my heart and plant churches according to the Bible the best that I know how. So I grew up kind of with one foot in both of those worlds, I would say. So one foot in this, you know, very thoughtful kind of Christianity, and then one foot also, like, I would go to youth groups and I would go to Awanas and I would go to vacation Bible schools, and like that was all part of my programming, was that IFB system, which wasn't really my dad's system. But
And
as a kid,
when you say IFB, just for anybody that's not familiar with the acronym,
sorry, yeah,
Independent Fundamental Baptist.
yeah,
Um, again, which we've both been to some churches that are independent fundamental Baptists that I would even dare say are healthy in many ways.
sure,
Um,
in a lot of ways,
but
yeah.
but largely, I mean, there's a lot of unhealthy.
There are
Uh,
there are multiple cults within the IFB, and if
yeah,
a church is cultish in the IFB, there it's each church is its own cult, and there may be some that are kind of within that same Hiles group, or Voglin's group, or the Landmark group. You know what I'm saying? Like those,
yeah,
Austin Gardner's group.
yeah. Bob
Those
Jones,
are
stuff like that. Yeah,
Bob Jones.
they were
I don't know.
actually a
I
little
don't want
more.
to.
They were a little more. They seemed a little more reasonable.
See, Bob Jones was a weird mix too, because my dad went to Bob Jones, and my dad is pretty like for pretty Bob Jones. They were in some ways pretty strict and heavy on some standards and things like that. but they were, I think they at least, they definitely made an effort to be intellectually honest.
Hmm. Yeah.
So they were compared to, most of the rest of the independent
Well,
fundamental
and
Baptists who were.
a lot of the unhealthy ones you're referencing, probably not, the Bob Jones types, I guess, but were the ones that were just like, instead of being intellectually honest, it was more like, okay, well,
It's manipulation, straight up.
right, but I'm saying like they have their standards and beliefs, but it's not because they like discovered them and mined them from the scriptures on their own. It was more so, well, this is what brother so and so taught me when I was growing up, and so
Personality cults.
we're gonna hold fast. We're
All of
gonna,
those were, yes, all of those were around a person.
yeah,
They were all
yeah.
personality cults. It's
Right.
Hiles, it's Roger Vogel, and it's Mickey
So your
Carter.
dad wasn't into any of that crap.
No, see, that's the difference. Is what I'm saying is like he
Yeah,
was not a personality cult kind of person. Although he there in that church in the Azores, his initial kind of draw into it was through one of those guys who was
sure.
pretty Hilesy, pretty culty, but he noticed it pretty quickly, and he was like, okay, that's not what. And then he went from there to Bob Jones. So, and I
Yeah.
think all that's relevant to understanding me and where I come from is because
Hmm.
my theological background is a foot in both of those
Well,
worlds. In
yes,
the
and
culty side,
it's interesting to make this point as well with what you're describing about this lack of critical thinking. When you meet someone who tells you a good thing, in the case of your father, for example, and many others, they become a Christian, they get drawn out of a life of misery and debauchery or whatever, and their life has
yeah,
changed, and that it changed for the better. um, but then a lot of times people think, okay, well, my life has changed for the better since I met Jesus at this church. I can turn my brain off, and just
yep,
whatever the pastor
I'm safe
says,
here.
yeah, whatever the pastor says, I don't have to, critique it. I can just accept it. But this way of this type of thinking doesn't just end in the church, and it's not unique to the
Oh
IFB
no,
world. This is
no, it's
political.
a human
Okay,
condition
it's
thing.
a human issue. Yeah, it's a human issue
Yes,
where there might be some political figure or some savant of something that says something that resonates with you, helps you, changes you, and all of a sudden you
you
become,
mythologize them.
yes, yes, you
You
mythologize them. That's such a
mythologize
great way to
them.
put it. You
That's
become a
what you do.
sycophant, and
Hmm.
you no longer question anything they say.
Hmm.
um and I think that's a temptation for everybody. It really
Yes,
is.
it is herd mentality, big time, and this is where I really believe that if whatever you want to call it, religion, spirituality, the true whatever that is the main function of it, is to pull people into a higher awareness that prevents them from falling into the the biologically evolved traps that we have of tribalism, herd mentality, those kind of things. So like I am, and we'll get into what I actually believe, but I
Yeah.
that to me is the function. Is it you've got to have something higher. You've got to have a capital T truth that you are submitting to, and that is taking your mind out
Yeah,
of that.
you have to appeal to a moral authority that transcends humanity. Because at the end of the day, no matter how good some human is, that human is still fallible, and able to be deceived or even to deceive you. So
And I
it
think that a lot of people who are quote unquote irreligious, they do this and they practice this. Um, but what they actually are doing is, to me, it's functionally the same as they practice thinking up on higher things of the philosophical implications, and they get into presuppositions, and they get into, they call it, you call it psychology or whatever you want to call it, but it's
yeah.
the way thought patterns work and the way that your brain is evolved and all of that. So but just that act of examining those things and separating yourself from that, to where you can gain a better awareness and you're not stuck in that lower level. Whether they're quote unquote religious or not, you're doing the same thing. You're doing the
Hmm.
same thing. To me, you're accessing the kingdom of heaven.
Hmm.
But anyway, so
So
that's back to the background. Unless you had a question.
yeah, no, yeah. But tell us more. Like, so you grew up in that system of a foot, one foot in both worlds of kind of like how you lived in your family's private life, and then kind of how your public
Yep.
image was with the people who were donating to your dad's ministry.
Yeah, and in our private life, I think that my dad really tried as hard as he could to be consistent, but knowing that it's a man, if you've never lived it, it's an easy thing to judge and a hard thing to understand. You understand it and I do because the way that this system that you didn't create, the way that the system that you're in with the best of intentions because you're trying to disseminate truth and you're trying to help people, right? And not that as well as I do human nature. There's missionaries who and church planters and pastors who absolutely don't have those intentions,
Right.
but a lot of them do. A lot of us did. And if you're in that situation and your ability to do that and your financial backing, depends on not pushing the boundaries too much, it's one of those things that makes you self-censor a lot. It makes you. It's very similar, honestly. Living as a
Y-
missionary on deputation and those kind of things is
Yeah.
very similar to the way that most people today live with the current media environment. It's I cannot be seen to cross the religious thresholds and the boundaries that I have been told are unacceptable, and it's a very religious response. So people getting canceled and people being attacked by
Yeah.
the online mob, and it's the same kind of life.
Yeah, no, it's true. In every scenario, especially with media, and if you dare say anything about some special interest group, whether they're a minority or a religious minority or foreigners or whatever, if you talk about the
Anything
Catholic,
that is not Western society. If you
yeah,
say anything bad about anything that is not Western society, you have broken one of the cardinal rules, and you will be punished by
yeah,
the priestly caste, and then they will encourage the peasants to come after you as well.
right, right. Even if what you're saying is
Yeah.
true, even if what you're saying is true and accurate, how dare you speak against uh,
Yes.
those
Big
people
brother.
with those people with tiny hats? But anyway, um,
Right. So I
yeah,
grew up, and it's very interesting to me because I grew up that way, and when I left, which we'll get to, but when I left, it was out of the frying pan and into the fire. I left in 2018, right at kind of the start of things getting super heavy this way in the world.
yeah,
Um, and I had the mistaken thought of like, okay, I'm leaving that kind of environment. I'm done with the self-censoring. I'm done with the I can't have honest questions about things.
yeah,
I'm gonna be ostracized for being a heretic if I even say that I'm thinking about maybe this thing. And I like I said, out of the frying pan into the fire. The entire world is that way, and I think that it's good for people to see because no one thinks no one like when if you tell them I grew up in a cult. I grew up in the independent fundamental Baptist cult, which again I was kind of divided, right? But I was there. I was saturated with that,
yeah.
influenced by that. People have this reaction of, oh, how did that happen? How could you get pulled into that? Well, why didn't you leave? Why did you stay? And what they need to see, like, everyone can see every cult except the one that they're in, and people
Hmm.
are in a functional cult with the same
Yeah.
manipulation tactics, the same censorship tactics. All of those things are being played out in our society today on a mass scale. And so it's like I think that people with our kind of background, we can be
We can
really
see,
helpful to wake
we
people up.
can, we can, and that's the whole. Honestly, that's and again with me from a Christian worldview, that's the whole point of the content I want to create is to wake people up to the truth. Um, because we're conditioned to live with this cognitive dissonance where we might see that the emperor really doesn't have any clothes, but
But
heaven
stop
for
looking and go be distracted by this shiny thing that we're gonna give you.
yeah, heaven forbid you talk about it. If you do, you're going to be beheaded or punished or something. So, yeah. Anyway, but but yeah, tell me, like, so that's how you grew up, and then as you became an
So
adult, go ahead, go ahead.
I had kind of the same typical experience that I think a lot of people who grew up that way did. So I hit 17 years old and left home. Went to North Florida, lived with my brother. Had no idea how the world worked. Absolutely no clue. Was not prepared for it in the slightest. I was, I was, and I want to be careful here because I don't want to say anything that seems like I'm putting down my parents or anything
No, of
because
course,
they were amazing parents and did the best that they could and that was the world that
absolutely.
they were in. But I don't think that
Dude, and I honestly thank you for saying that, because that takes a lot of humility and grace, uh, to be able to go, yeah, my parents are human. I say the same thing about
yeah,
my parents,
I've
my
made so
in-laws,
many mistakes as a parent. Oh my god, are you kidding me?
and to be able to look at your parents, coming through maybe what you've come through, or someone else in a similar scenario, and to come on the other side and be like, oh, my parents, I hate them. I want to distance myself from them. I can't believe,
Right.
and mind you, like, okay, if you were being, SA'd by your parents, I can understand why you'd want distance between you and them, right? But
Sure.
if it just because your parents grew up in a hyper strict religious environment and you ended up not agreeing with it, and yet you somehow hate them because of it, no, you're just emotionally immature. Okay.
Yes.
I should be able to
Yes.
appreciate and love the fact they did the best they could with what they had, and maybe I discovered
Right.
something they didn't, maybe I don't agree with them about something, but
And
literally, for the family unit to fall apart because, when kids become adults and they don't end up landing on everything the same way their parents did, and that means you have to reject your mother and father. I think it's a violation of the fifth commandment, number one, and number
100%.
two, I think that's how cultures and nations fall apart, when we faction the
Yes.
nuclear family.
A
So
100% agree with you. Exactly.
kudos
You need
kudos to your parents.
Yeah, and I have like my mom passed away 5 years ago, but I had two amazing parents. I still have one. I have a stepmother now who's also fantastic and deserves a lot of honor and praise. Um, but yeah, I was gonna say too, like if you have that kind of attitude toward whether it's your family or friends who are still in the thing that you supposedly grew past, right? And your attitude is that way of judgment and condescension and division,
Yeah.
it doesn't work because you're saying you grew. Well, the only what are the fruits of growth, man? What are the fruits of the spirit? Like this growth always looks the same, right? And I love this about like there is no you don't get a little bit of love with no joy. You don't get joy with no peace. You know what I mean? Like it's love, joy, peace, gentleness, goodness, temperance, kindness,
Yeah.
faith, meekness. It's whenever you are growing, that's what it looks like. And everything grows with it, right? So like if you're saying I grew past them and you're impatient and unloving
Hmm.
and all of that, you didn't grow at all you did was just slide into a new
Yeah.
cultish way of thinking. That's all
Yeah.
you did. And this
Yeah.
is what I see from most people who leave religion and they're so reactive about it and they're so sensitive about it. And oh, you don't know how much I was traumatized. Like, bitch, please. I absolutely know. Trust me, I know. So,
Yeah. Yeah. No, I like
but
that.
if you're
Go
not
ahead.
showing the growth, if you can't look at it that way, man, you just need to grow. And yeah, you have to look at it and say, hey, the people that were in my life, whether it was family, whether it was spiritual leadership, whatever it was, you know, if they genuinely loved me and had good intentions, dude, that's all that you can do. That's all that you personally can do in your life. And the older that you get, I'm almost 43, man. Like the amount of mistakes I can look back on and be like, so dumb. And hey, I
Yeah.
actually hurt my family this way and I hurt my kids this way, but I never meant to.
Right.
I was doing the best that I could. And if you if you can't give that grace to other people, the flip side of that too is you're gonna really struggle to give it to yourself. And
Well,
I
yeah,
think that
that's a
those
great
two,
point.
yeah, it's a two-way street. You're either being gracious with yourself and with other people, or you're being ungracious to both.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's no way to live. Um,
No.
no. Well, so tell me more. So you grew up that way.
Yeah. So
You.
I left at 17. I joined the military, and that
That's
was for
right. Were
me.
you in the Navy?
Navy. Yeah. Who got
Go
Navy?
figure. Go figure.
Say something. Say something. If you, yeah, you didn't serve, so you don't get to call us gay.
I'm kidding.
The Marines absolutely get to say whatever they want. Yeah, and
No,
they
and
do.
that's cool. How many years were you in?
I actually only did a year. I had a medical discharge, which I had no idea at the time. I had a genetic heart disorder
Oh wow.
that was making me pass out, and I had it was ventricular tachycardia, but I had no idea. And the military does not do a very good job at all of checking you out to make sure that things are good. And now they were like, take some Motrin, you're stressed out,
So
whatever. And
were
then it
you
was like,
guys were in the Azores when you enlisted still? Your parents were?
not the Azores. By that time, we'd actually moved to southern Portugal to the Algarve.
Okay.
Yeah, but I was 17, left, joined the military,
Right, right,
and
right.
that was a like I said, I'm 17 years old. You know, grew up in a very sheltered environment.
Yeah.
Didn't know how the real world worked at all. Didn't know how to get into college. Didn't know how to start a
Were
career.
you homeschooled?
I was mixed, back and forth. So we did public school
Okay.
several years, but and always supplemented at least with homeschooling, which is another
Gotcha.
thing that my parents did really well, was that they taught me not just how to read, they taught me to love reading.
Mm-hmm.
So they always read to us, they always bought us books, they always like made it a fun thing. This is a reward. If you do your chores, you get to read your book. So
That's great.
again, like that's why I say I grew up with kind of one foot in both worlds, one in this like kind of Bob Jones style, like very focused on critical thinking
Yeah.
and intellectual, consistency. But at the same time, we're also kind of in this weird mix of the IFB world.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
right, right. So you
So
got out of the military, and then what happened after leaving the Navy?
so I kind of bounced around for a little bit. Was pretty just lost as like an 18, 19-year-old kid. Had no idea. I had gone out into the world and tried to, be a part of it, and that backfired massively. Didn't work at all. Like being kicked out of the Navy, even though it was an honorable discharge, was so incredibly like demoralizing for me because I had worked so hard to adapt to the military and succeed. And like I was a fat kid and I had to lose a ton of weight just to get into boot camp. I was on a fruit diet for 3 months. You
Hmm.
know, first day at boot camp was just, you get off the bus at 4 a.m. and they're screaming in your face and calling you everything that they can. And again, 17 years old from this background, no exposure, no preparation. I'm malnourished, from this diet to even make the minimum weight to get in, completely out of shape, and now you got to run a mile and a half in under whatever minutes, and the entire time I'm going, the drill instructor is just jogging backwards leisurely next to me and just talking crap. And I don't want you in my Navy, fat boy. I don't want you here. You're not cut out for this. And he's like, oh, and by the way, if you throw up on my floor, you're getting back on the bus and you're gone. So if you got to throw up, it's down the shirt. I threw up 4 times. 4 times. I had puke
Wow.
running into my socks. But I was not going to quit. I was going
But you
to. I
made
had.
it. Yeah,
I did. I did. And then it got taken away from me,
I see.
and I was devastated. Devastated. I had worked so hard. They had, and boot camp is programming. They program you to have a whole new ego, a whole new sense of identity and self. And so I was the United States Navy. Like
Right,
that's
right.
who I was, right? And then they just like within a matter of a week, they were just like, "Oh yeah, we're looking at your medical charts and all of this, and you passed out, and then you passed out again, and then okay, you're gone." And I'm like, "What?
Wow.
What do you mean I'm gone? No, I'm not gone." And they're like, "No, no, no, you're gone. Bye." So that was kind of the mental state that I was in, right? And now I'm like, okay, I didn't really want. I knew I didn't want the abusive stuff in the world that I had grown up in, but I was a spiritually hungry kid, you
Mm.
know, and I really did genuinely love God and love people, and I didn't know what to do. And I called my dad. I got back in church for a little while in Florida, and then I just felt I felt that there was a calling on my life somehow. I felt like I had some spiritual experiences in church where I felt that I'm meant to do something, you know, with the truth that helps people. That's
Yeah.
about really as far as and my interpretation and having grown up in that world, I believe that was an absolutely genuine experience. I believe that was absolutely a genuine experience with God. But I interpreted it the only way that I knew how to interpret it, which
Yeah.
was God is calling me to be a missionary, right? Because
Yeah.
that's the world that we grew up in. Is that if you get this kind of experience with God, it's because God wants you to go and go be a missionary, right? So that was the route that I decided to. That's what God wants me to do, right? So
Yeah.
I went. I first went back to Portugal, where my dad had started a church there in southern Portugal, with the idea of I was going to train for the ministry with him, and so I got there, and I actually ended up playing professional rugby for a little while.
Hmm.
Speaking of, and this insane guy, this is my dad, by the way.
Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, you're good.
Hi, Dad.
You met my dad, Mike,
I
right?
think I've met him once before. Yeah.
You look familiar. I'm not sure. How
Hey,
you
That's
doing?
Mike.
not too bad. Nice to see you again.
Wait just a second.
Yeah, but this insane old man, was training me for the ministry there in Portugal, and he was playing rugby with the first division team in his 50s. Crazy. He's hard to
Oh
stop.
wow.
Yeah. But so I went there, started getting some of that like introduction, kind of back into what ministry is really about and shadowing my dad and those kind of things. And again, I kind of followed the route that I knew, right? So if you're in this situation, then what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to go to Bible college, right? You're supposed to go
Right.
to the
Yeah.
seminary and
There's a pipeline of how this all works out, and
right.
it's already pre-made, and you're just supposed to get in it and go. If you want to have a
It's a treadmill.
significant, yeah, if you
Hmm.
want to be significant for God, then you follow this pipeline of Bible college and church ministry.
Yeah, that's it. That's what you do. And so that's what I was doing with good intentions, and I ended up going to. I had no idea where to go. I hadn't even grown up in the states. I'd been around those churches, but I didn't know which seminaries to go to. I didn't have any money. I didn't know how I was going to pay for it. So I found at the time like the cheapest Bible college I could find. That was in that world that I knew, and that was Landmark in Florida, which I don't know if you know anything about Landmark.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Mickey
And
Carter.
yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Phil Stringer. Yep.
Yeah.
So okay, at the time now, you got to give some context, I guess, because no one else is gonna have any idea what this crazy thing is. So
Sure.
this was
Give us some doozies as far as
ooh
your
ooh
maybe it's funny. Listen. I don't know if you can see this on the camera, but the brand of pipe tobacco I'm smoking right now,
yeah, cult. I love it.
Colt, it's the best brand. It's the best tobacco I've smoked. Anyway, just kind of funny that we're talking about this, and I just saw it sitting here. I'm like, oh crap. So like, what are some of the craziest? Like, if you could say two, three, maybe the craziest beliefs or doctrines that maybe you picked up while being at Landmark, that most listeners that
Yeah.
unless people that didn't come from that world would just be like, what? Like, I mean, what's the first things that come to mind?
Um. Okay, the first two things that come to mind would be they were hyper King James only. Which I know you grew up in a very similar kind of background with that
So they
too.
were so they were big
Uh,
they were big LeBron fans. Is that what that means?
yes, exactly. The King James version. This was a big thing in the IFB, and turned into a big split. For a long time, it was pretty much across the board. Everybody is King James only, but
Yeah,
the King James only thing is basically the idea that, and there's levels to it. You've got the Ruckmanites that go all the way to double inspiration. That
yeah,
when the King James version was translated, that the translation itself was inspired by God, which
yeah.
honestly is the only real consistent way to be King James only.
Literally, I thank you. I'm glad to be consistent, and that is the whole goal with truth. Truth is
Right.
consistent across the board. Truth is timeless. Truth is
Yeah.
truth, whether it was in a today or 1,000 years ago in a different culture and a different language. Truth is truth, right?
Yeah.
So to be consistent, to be truthful, you've got to be consistent. And you are correct. The Ruckmanites were the only consistent KJVO position where Sam Gipp literally said, if a man from Russia wants to have the word of God, he needs to learn to speak English so he can read the King James.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
what
And
the
so,
heck?
and this was the same way throughout, like, all of the IFB. You had these threads of the sweater that were super crucial, that some people would really truly believe and be consistent with, and most people weren't really interested in consistency.
Yeah,
Um, but it does explain the extremism, and this is why, like, the presuppositional stuff is so important, the critical thinking stuff is so important, because if you decide that you absolutely with certainty believe certain things, then if you're going to be consistent, it's going to, like, those things are going to take you to extremism. And the whole missionary culture that I grew up in was that way. The Austin Gardner, which we'll get into, was that
sure.
way. The whole vision thing, based on a premise and a presupposition that everyone is going to hell who doesn't believe the way that we do, and and it is your responsibility, and their blood is going to be on your hands
Yeah,
if you don't do something about it. It is your responsibility to evangelize and to save people from this eternal damnation. And if you genuinely actually believe what you say you believe, then you're going to be a missionary. Like, there is nothing else for you to do with your life.
right. Yeah,
There's nothing else to do. Right?
yeah,
And so the King James thing was very much that way. It's like, if you believe the King James version, if you start with that conclusion that I have to believe that this book that I have in my hands is completely perfect, inerrant, infallible, inspired, plenary, like, I have to believe that. If you start with I have to believe that, and we're gonna disagree big time on that, but I'm gonna take that way past the King James thing. I think that
sure.
that I don't believe in inerrancy and infallibility and all that in
Hmm.
those ways, but I don't need to. My faith structure, like, if you pull that thread, it doesn't affect it at all. But it absolutely does. So you have to be very careful what you decide that you're absolutely certain about, because it will take you places if you're a logical, critical thinker.
Hmm.
I would
Yeah,
even say Calvinism, Reformed theology. Like, I still say this. I'm absolutely not a Calvinist at all. I'm not a Christian. But
mm.
if I did believe in inerrancy and in the inspiration of the Bible and in the literal sense, you're a Reformed theologian. Like, that's the only
Hmm.
thing that you can do. And trust
It's
me,
consistent. It's
I
consistent.
tried. Yeah, I think it's wrong, but
Hmm.
it's at least got an internal consistency to it.
Yeah, right.
Not a perfect one, which we can get into if you want, but it's
Sure,
enough to
sure.
where it'll scratch that itch in your head and lessen the
Right.
cognitive dissonance, but it
Well,
may take you to some places that you don't like.
right. That make you uncomfortable. Right. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
but I want to hear more about too. Like, so I'm really
Landmark,
interested
yeah.
in hearing. Well, I mean, landmark. If you have more to share there, but I genuinely want
Eh,
to hear about vision. I think that's where the
yeah, let's
story
let's
gets
skip ahead to there. Let's skip ahead to there.
the
Because
story gets
not
good.
yeah, Vision's a story, bro.
You know,
Vision was
and I
wild. Vision
remember
was a legit cult.
I remember when you were kind of in that, and some of the conversations we had, and how that's, and I'm giving a little teaser here, but how that once you start to question the narrative within a cult, if you will,
Yeah.
the whole thing turns on you, uh, all at
Well,
once.
they circle the wagons
You know.
real quick,
So how did you get
real
connected
quick.
with Vision, and what is Vision, and who ran it and everything?
Yeah. So Vision, um, my wife at the time, my first wife, who grew up also extremely independent fundamental Baptist in the Hiles Anderson camp, which is one of the extremely culty ones,
Hmm.
and she's never left that mentality in her life. She's started there and she has stayed there.
Hmm.
But she had gone on a missions trip to Peru where this guy called Austin Gardner was an independent Baptist Hiles sort of very influenced by the Hiles Anderson group, very cult like. He had started a ministry in Peru that was absolutely, I mean, off the charts cultish over like 20 years in Peru. His nickname that was what you called him, or else it was disrespectful, that everyone called him was
Yeah.
Jefe, which is boss. It's
So
very
you're wait.
mafioso.
Let me ask you. So you're telling me that you're being serious. You're not just being funny. That if you didn't call him Jefe or boss, you you would be talked to.
That's not always the way that cults work. It was more soft pressure. So, and he always used to give this illustration. He would always hold up his hand like this and he'd say, "This is how leadership works. This is how leadership works. Here's how it is. You're right here. You're right here. Trent, Mark Coffey, they're up here. They're up here. You're down here. If you do so and so and mind your p's and q's, I'll let you get up to here. And then you show me after a few years that you're really teachable and you're really going to pay attention and you're going to stick around, and it was always this manipulative thing of you've got to prove to me that you're trustworthy. It's very gaslighty. Like you have to prove to me. And so if you didn't do things the way that the group around him did, that's going to drop you down. It's going to drop you
So
down.
so effectively, your acceptance was contingent upon your blind loyalty to him and his vision.
Yes, 100%. 100%. I'm a young
What
kid.
is
I don't know.
what is
Go
what
ahead.
does that do to a young married man who's just starting out in ministry?
Oh boy. Well, I mean it. I didn't. I didn't have that good of a relationship, I suppose, at the beginning. It was. I would say it was at least.
I just mean like this. How does that
No,
affect
no, no. But it kind of
a
it
young?
ruined it absolutely ruined whatever marriage I had. Ruined it
But
completely.
even beyond the marriage aspect, which obviously is important, but I mean you as an individual living under that idea of there's this guy that I really look up to and I almost mythologize, and
Yes. Not
he says
almost.
you totally did, right?
Everyone did.
Yeah, and so he says that if I want to get close to him or be accepted by him, I have to prove my loyalty over time by adhering to all of his expectations. Otherwise, he's going
Hmm.
to keep me at arm's length. I'm saying
Yes.
like for a man, and I think this is a big problem with men in the world today, not just in the church, is that we as young men many times have never had older men introduce us into manhood in a healthy
Yes.
way. It was, and I'm not talking about being soft. I don't mean that. That it's good for a man to be hard on a younger man and teach him discipline and teach him hard work and skills and that kind of thing. That's great. But I think a lot of times it's like, instead of doing that, which takes time and effort and mentorship and genuine Christian love, fatherly love,
Yep. Yep.
it's easier to be like, I want all these young men to stroke my ego if they intend to succeed in life. So
Yes, because it builds my empire, it builds my value, it builds, yeah, yeah. It's attention and loyalty are currencies, And
Mhm.
Austin Gardner was one of these guys that, and this is typical of a lot of them, and it goes to what you're saying, that I always said it, that the group of men around him was the Lost Boys. You look at Mark Coffey and Trent Cornwell and those guys and Robert Canfield and all of those guys who were like close with him, Jason Holt, what was his name, Jeff Bush, like all of these guys, they were, none of them had those strong figures in their life, and so it was very easy for him to come in and recruit them
Yeah, basically
and
say
condition them.
I'll be your daddy, but you
I'll be
need to meet
daddy.
my expectations.
That's it. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. It's a very
And
paternal.
bro, yeah, the fatherlessness epidemic um
Why
is
why
a
do you think Andrew Tate? Why do you think Andrew Tate is as popular as he is? He's popular because of Lost Boys. That's what
yeah,
it is. You
yeah.
you leave boys who have all of that aggression, all of that restlessness, all of that sense of adventure, that sense of I need to make something of my life, which is part of the masculine energy of the Logos. You are supposed to do that. Is your
That's built
nature.
in. It's a good
It's
thing.
built
It's a
in,
good
yes.
thing.
But if it's not, but if no one's channeling it like you're saying in a correct way, in a healthy way, someone else is going to see the value in that, and that's currency. One of those lives, oh my goodness, what he will do for me, he will do anything for me. And that's exactly
Mhm.
what Austin Gardner built. Boys.
So Austin Gardner starts this big ministry in Peru. When I say ministry, like he was a missionary church planter guy,
Yeah.
and started a training center for young missionary families who would come there, learn how to do missionary work, et cetera, et cetera. And
A
then from
honeypot for lost boys, basically.
sure, sure,
We'll,
and
we'll, we'll give you, yeah. And then from there, he moved back to the States and he transplanted that same honeypot for Lost Boys to a garden where he felt like he could get more production out of it. But because there was more money, he knew that he couldn't raise the money that he needed to do to expand his empire while being in Peru. So he came back to the States to ostensibly start a church, but that was it, to have the training center for these young missionaries. And
right.
so naive young me, sees all the flash and dazzle. Well, I want to be a successful missionary. I want to get things done. Look at what this guy's
Mhm.
done. Look what he's man,
Yeah.
80 churches all over Peru. Everyone calls him Jefe. Everybody. He had
He
results, right? And
he was your Andrew Tate, basically. You
yeah,
know.
yeah, 100%. And he was a lot of people's Andrew Tate. And so I went there, and then from the very beginning, it was immediately into that. They have a whole system of they pull you in with warmth and community and identity. This is who you are, right? God has done something special and called you to something special in your life, and we're your family now, and we're going to help you fulfill this mandate. And God's will is going to be done through you. We're going to build the kingdom of God together. So it was very heady, very intoxicating. But at the same time, as they're pulling you in with that, it's just like being in a toxic romantic relationship, which I also ended up in. But it's that I'm going to pull you close, but then I'm going to cause distance and make you chase me. I'm going to make you know what I'm saying? I'm going to make you need me. You won't
Yeah.
have an identity without me. You're going to feel guilty and shameful if you don't have my approval in your life. And we're building this wiring and firing this neural network together too of I'm not saying that I'm the voice of God, but that's what it is. God, I am God's man, and obviously because
Yeah.
God has his hand on me and look at all the what he's done through me, and you want to be this as well. So like it's very very much, this is the channel. You're not in the will of God if you're, not submitted to authority, and you're not teachable. How could you be in the will of God if you're not willing to be taught?
Yeah. Yeah. That's it's troubling for sure. Obviously I went and visited there in 2012, and they tried to
What was
recruit
your
me.
impression
It was
at the
similar.
time?
Yeah, I kind of got that vibe. You invited me to come to their missions conference thing,
The
and
summit, I think. No, no, you did come to the actual missions conference. That's right.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so it was. I could sense everything you're saying now. I could kind of sense it, which sucks because it sucked because I thought in my mind before I had gotten there, I had mythologized Gardner, and I'd never met him because I had read his book on how to fundraise, you
Right.
know. And so I thought that was the coolest thing ever. I get to meet this guy whose book I read, and then I
And
get
then
there.
he kept you at arm's length because he had already determined that you were not one of his target demographic. You weren't needy enough. That's what it was. And that's all that his missions conferences were. They were filters to see which guys he could get in that were
Uh,
susceptible and needy that he could give that identity to, and he could poach them and
yeah,
make them part of his empire.
yeah, yeah. It was weird, It was really weird, and you even told me too. And I'm not picking on you, but we had an outdoor get together or barbecue or something there. And on the way there, you said, "Dude, just make sure you ask him lots of questions. Just make sure,
Yes.
you know." And
Roll over and show your belly is what I was saying, and I didn't even know what I was saying.
well,
Be
and I'm not.
submissive.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to bust your balls, but I mean
Yeah.
that was the thing. So, but yeah, it was odd. Um, when we got there, just like you said, the arm's length thing, and just you obviously need to be like us if you want to fit in with us. Um, so anyway, but back to you.
Yeah.
I mean, so for you, you started seeing the cracks in.
Well, it was very difficult because on one hand, and he always kept me at arm's length. I tried to get up that ladder as much as I could because I had this calling on my life and I felt like this was the way I was supposed to go, right?
Mm,
But at the same time, I had grown up also with this critical thinking and this, I need to be rationally consistent and I'm very curious. And so I was very naive that I projected onto them. I didn't know their game. I thought that they were sincere. I thought that they were
right.
genuine. And
Yeah.
a
You,
lot
you,
and a lot of the people around him, in fact, most of the people around him were genuine. They were like me, right? Some of them were not. You had people like whoever ended up in like top leadership, Trent Cornwell, what's his, Jeff Bush, Mark Coffey.
yeah.
Mark Coffey. I think is a genuinely good guy. I think he is. I think that he's just such a programmed follower that he couldn't break out of it. But that caused him real conflict, and I think Trent is probably the same way too. I think that he has a good heart, and he didn't. And it's been interesting since then. The empire of his actually collapsed. There was a big
Right.
scandal about him being abusive to foster children, and all kinds of stuff came out. Big scandals. So he's out of his own empire and kind of disgraced.
Gardner.
Um, yeah, did you not know that?
I'd heard a little bit about that a while back, but yeah.
Yeah, he's been trying, I think, to like build himself back up, and because people like that never stop, they never stop. They can't. It's a compulsion with these cult leaders.
Hmm.
But anyway, most of the people around him, I think, were genuine. But my experience was always that I turned into the troublemaker. I was known as the troublemaker from the beginning, even though I wasn't trying to cause trouble. But I would his Friday classes. That was his big thing. Friday class. And Friday class was a big circle of chairs set up in the auditorium. Did you ever go to a Friday class?
Yeah.
Okay, so you remember this, and it would just be him holding court. That's what it was, and all of his lieutenants are going to be there. all the missionaries that he's trained and sent out on deputation, all the church workers, all the people who are in the inner circle of, because Vision was, it was very weird. It was a cult within a church. There was an actual apparatus that acted like a normal church. And I have friends who were still in that church in the post Austin
Yeah.
thing, and they had a completely separate experience. Like, and I don't know if you ever met Andrew Pearson. Awesome guy, love Andrew. He was one of the deacons, but he had that alternate weird experience of it where he was just like, no, I'm just helping my local church, and
Yeah.
it functioned like a local church, but the purpose of the church being there was for this inner circle to exist, this cult within a church. And they tried to keep them pretty well separate. Like, one of the worst things that you could do is talk about something that sensitive that was discussed in Friday class with a normal church member. You don't do that. If they're not at least up here, they just they didn't know. They had no idea that there was this cult going on in the middle of this seemingly normal church that they went to.
Yeah.
But that was Friday class. But I was always the guy that would have all the questions, and I would see the logical inconsistencies because that's how I was raised. That's how I grew up, and I don't like leaving cognitive dissonance to just sit there.
Yeah.
And so I would, in good faith, I would always try to, well, hey, but what about, and doesn't the Bible say, and that, and wow, I mean, I got called the thorn in his side by everybody. Scott's just the thorn in Austin's side.
Well, you are kind
And
of a pain in the butt.
oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And it got to the point after a few years of this where I got so fed up with it to where I kind of embraced that role, where I was just like, screw it. Like, I know what you're doing. But at that point I was so deep in, that was like I was already almost done with deputation. Like, I have my own kind of thing going. I'm going to Spain. And I'm like, okay, you guys can just have that thing. And I was sort of the weird, kind of cool rebel to some of the younger guys. It's like, Scott doesn't really follow the rules,
Yeah.
but also means he's never gonna get promoted. He's in the group, but he's not really in the group, kind of thing. They couldn't kick me out, is what it was.
You're a black
I
sheep.
had, yeah, and I had done enough, and like, I got done with deputation quick. I raised a lot of money. I did, raise the profile of their brand, if you want to say, because like, I was publicly very supportive of them and all the churches and the new markets that I broke open for them, and that's the way that they looked at it. It was like, if you're a missionary going around under our umbrella, you're promoting our brand, and that means that more money is going to flow through our organization as people support more of our missionaries. And then,
Yeah.
Austin Gardner is buying his private jets, which he literally did have private planes.
No, he did not. He did not.
Yeah. He had two private planes. Not jets. Sorry, just planes.
But like he used them to travel, or just
Yeah,
recreationally.
both. Yeah, that was one of the things that you did not talk about ever with church members. They didn't need to know that.
You're telling me? I see. This is news to me. Dude had
Yeah,
he had planes.
yeah, yeah.
Really?
He had two planes. Yeah, he had planes.
That's
He had like several houses. Um, yeah, the dude made bank. Like, we never talked about that, and the church would always do things like, oh, we're gonna do this special thing where we're gonna buy the pastor a new car or whatever, and he was very good at like kind of playing down all of that. And no, I give all of my money away to, and my whole life is just for the
Do you
missionaries.
think
And
this might be speculation? Do you think he was a millionaire?
it wouldn't surprise me. I couldn't tell you.
But
Because
his
none of
house
us
was.
really knew.
Did you ever go to his house? Was his house really nice?
Oh yeah, very nice. He had a very nice house. Yeah, and I think I could be wrong, but I think I remember that he owned properties in Peru too and different stuff. And who knows? Who knows? I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah. But
I knew
meanwhile,
about the planes.
meanwhile, you and your family lived in your minivan.
Right. Right. Exactly. And the whole pyramid scheme thing too. Like on deputation, I found out. I learned this. Like you're expected to support the mission board. It's not a rule. Nothing is a rule. No one has to do
Yeah,
anything, right?
but you got to pay your
But
dues
you're
if you want to be part.
yes, and they would regularly bring it up because, like, I would start. Oh yeah, Mark Coffey and those guys would come to be like, "Hey man, I saw your support statement this month. You're doing really good." Yeah, yeah.
So
Well,
wait. You're saying that other guys in your organization had access to your financials.
oh yeah, absolutely.
So
They
your
knew everyone in the
financials.
mission board knew exactly how much you were, and they would talk about it. They would bring it
So
because it wasn't a shameful thing. It was like, look at man, David Gardner's bringing in 12K a month, man.
so basically, other guys who were higher up in the ranking could essentially look. They'd know your financials and then put pressure on you to give bigger donations to the organization.
Yeah, 100%, 100%.
That's so messed
Um,
up. That's messed up.
oh yeah, and I knew that was messed up from the beginning, and so I was like, okay, hold on. So the mission board is a ministry of the local church, right? And I'm a member of the local church. I'm a founding member of the local church, and the mission board is there to help me and my mission, and they're taking ownership instead of paying a mission board or something to do all the administration. The church is volunteering to do that. Well, on paper they're like, well, yes, that yes, that's but and then but we have to pay the admins and people to do all this stuff for you, and I'd be like, okay, well, I remember having the conversation and being like, well, I don't want to be a drain on the church. How much am I costing them? Like I
Yeah.
want to pay my way. I want to pay my way. And they're like, well, it's not about paying your way. And then also they were very big into the faith promise missions giving thing too. So like it was again a lot of that pressure to everybody, almost everybody. I was one of the exceptions. Gave far more to church's missions fund than they ever got anything back out of it. It was like people would support the general missions program for 600 a month, 800 a month, 1,000 a month, and then for Vision Baptist Missions, like it got to the point where literally the director Jeff Bush came to me and he was like, "Look, we don't really have a minimum, but you're giving the least, and nobody gives less than $300 or $400 a month. Like nobody does that." So it was just a shame. And at that point, I was just laughing because I was in this position where they couldn't get rid of me, but I saw their game and I just wasn't gonna play it.
So basically, it's like a pay to play thing. Kind of
Yeah,
you get to be a part of this organization. You get to climb the ladder of approval
right.
for
Yes,
effectively the CEO slash pastor of this organization. You get to wear their brand, and they get to
yes.
advertise you. But it's all
It's like a
contingent on.
franchise fee. It's a franchise fee.
Yeah, it's all contingent on how much you invest into them. The money that you're going around and earning, you have to give a considerable portion back to them to justify all the perks that you receive from being connected to them. And if you don't, even though
Right.
you're not obligated, if you don't, we're going to make you feel really bad about it.
Yeah, you're disloyal and you're selfish and all that.
Gotcha.
So that was Vision. I got done with the deputation process and moved to Barcelona where I went to go start my church.
Wait, how is that again?
So
Barcelona?
Barcelona, tío. No
Say
seas
it right.
gilipollas, pero no seas gilipollas.
You got to say it right, you gilipollas.
Pero hostia. I do miss Spanish curse words, man. They're so fun.
They really hit different.
They do. Pero
Um,
joder. Yes.
Anyway,
What I love is the cremallera invisible. this el gesto así de España, the invisible zipper. Whenever they're mad, they do this.
Is that or this right
Or
here? Yeah,
yes.
it
And
was
always with the
fantastic.
shrugs. Always yes.
It's that Mediterranean culture that uses all their hands all the time. If you tie their hands, they can't speak.
Yes, exactly.
But so you get to Barcelona. What year was that you arrived in Barcelona?
2013. I got to Barcelona, got done with deputation. Got to
Okay.
Barcelona.
So and
And
then you
at this point
immediately
I had this
jumped.
strained
So your
weird
relationship
relationship.
was already strained with your organization with Vision when you got to Barcelona.
Oh yeah, big
Okay.
time. And
So then,
also I skipped a big thing. I skipped a
oh,
big
okay.
thing. So
Yeah.
during my time at Vision also, that's when I started getting more into studying Reformed theology.
Oh, that's right.
So
See, because I remember when we were in at that place in Missouri or Belleville, Illinois, and you're like, dude, have you ever heard of Mark Driscoll? I was like,
right.
no, who's that? Yeah.
You
Anyway.
got me. I think you met me in Cage Stage Calvinist. I'm pretty
Oh,
sure.
definitely, definitely.
Yeah, yeah. So it was, but again, it was the same way that I did everything. It was very well intentioned and
Yeah.
drawing on that rational, critical background that I had been raised with,
Yeah.
to approach the scriptures that way. And you know, teaching Sunday school classes and different things like that. I'm teaching through the book of John. I'm teaching through Romans, all of this verse by verse, and I couldn't get away from. Again, if you're going to take, and a lot of people disagree with me on this. This is what I think is that if you're going to
Mm.
be really consistent with that approach to the Bible, you're going to end up somewhere on that reform spectrum. There's some, or at the very least, you're going to get to a point of just saying mystery and leave it at mystery.
You're slapping the mystery
Um,
label on everything because that's convenient. Because it's difficult. In all seriousness, to your point, it is difficult if you're consistent to say those hard things in public and other people not go, you believe what? You
mhm.
believe certain people were created for nothing more than for God to show his righteousness through their destruction? That's a hard thing to say as a human to
and
another
and
human.
and I would argue that the fact that it's a hard thing to say is because it should be a hard thing to say.
Of
I
course it
think
should
that
be. It should be a hard
well,
thing.
but this is where we
Yeah.
disagree. This is where we disagree. I think that the reason it's a hard thing to say is because it's going against something that your inner consciousness, your inner connection to God is just going, wait, what is coming out of my mouth?
Hmm.
That ain't right.
But the
But I
point
think
is,
that
but the point is that being consistent leads you to those places where if you are
yeah.
honest and consistent, you're going to say things that people it's going to make you uncomfortable and others. And so you got to but like so you're in Barcelona, right? In 2013. Did you speak Spanish before you got there?
Nope. Nope.
No.
Didn't speak
Okay.
Spanish. I grew up speaking Portuguese, so I at least had the foundation of a similar romantic,
Right,
romance
right.
language.
So
But
did you
it definitely wasn't enough.
did you kind of like you didn't go directly into church planning? Did you intern for a while with some other veteran missionary?
I pretty much did actually go straight into church planning. I was a
Oh,
crazy
okay.
man, dude. Like, and it wasn't totally intentional. I got there and I decided, okay, my number one priority is I'm learning Spanish as fast as I can. So I went to a town called Sabadell, which is
Hmm.
like 45 minutes outside of Barcelona,
Yeah.
um, because nobody spoke English there. And I knew if I stayed in the city, I'm gonna get a lot of English. So I went there and just got my immersion schedule. Got a Spanish tutor, um, and that was my whole life was learning Spanish.
Yeah. And when do
And
you
I have
and you started planting like right then?
well, I didn't mean to start as soon as I started. So about what 4 months in, probably 4 or 5 months in. Did you ever meet Pedro Piñol?
That name rings a bell. I'm probably
Pero,
did.
hermano Pedro, él hablaba así porque tenía el acento
That
súper
name
marcado catalán.
that name really
Yeah.
rings a bell. I can't put a face to it, but I
Funny guy,
remember
funny
I
guy.
remember visiting you in 2017 in the summer, and the church building was under construction at the time.
Yeah, the one in Sabadell. Right. So the first place, okay, Pedro Piñol calls me after like 4 months. He's a Catalan Spanish pastor, right? And he's like, okay, so I heard that you want to start a church in this area called Valles, and we need a church there. And he said, so our church actually owns a property, a little storefront property in Ripollet, which is really close to there. And he said, would you want it for the church? And I'm like, brother, that would be fantastic, but I'm in language school. I just got here a couple of months ago. Like, it's going to be a while.
Yeah.
And he
Yeah.
was like, well, our church has to do something with it, and they're pressuring me to sell it, and I don't want to sell it. And so the only thing I can do is I have to give it to someone who's going to start a church, or they're going to make me sell it. And I was like, well, okay, can I take it and like maybe I'll renovate it and prepare it, but not really use it for a year or so. And he was like, yeah, that's fine. That's fine. As long as you're doing something with it, then, I want that to be a church. So that's what I did. I was like, okay, now on the side, I'm doing language school and now I'm, renovating this place and setting it up as a church and everything. But that
Yeah.
freaked me out. Just doing that, I'm like, I am not ready for this.
Right.
And then as I'm there, fixing up the church building in Ripollet, this young Argentine guy named Pablo comes and knocks on the door, and he's like selling something. He was selling like fire extinguisher services or whatever. So I get to talking with him in my broken Spanish and whatever. And he finds out what I'm at. Turns out he's the son of an Argentinian missionary pastor, charismatic, and he was like a lapsed Christian for a long, long time, and had been a drug dealer and all this stuff. But he'd recently been born again, and wanted to have someone disciple him and whatever. So that turned into kind of my first like just meeting with him, having Bible study, stuff like that. And then other people started coming, and organically it just started growing. And so within like about a month after having the place, we had 20-25 people, and they're all coming to me and saying, hey, pastor, we this is a church, can we have church?
Yeah.
And yeah, so I got thrown into it way faster than I anticipated.
Okay.
Built that church, from the ground up that way. Yup, man, 30 years old. I didn't know anything. But I was, crazy enough to try something. And
Sure.
the first couple years, I'd say, of the church were actually, at the time, they felt like a really good time. That was the most I'd ever enjoyed the ministry. Because it was that excitement of a new church, and I brought in the energy that was in my heart, which was really, let's love each other, let's build a real community, let's focus on God and see some awesome things happen. And people were
Yeah.
excited about it, people were invested in it. And then it started getting infiltrated more and more by and that ironically, that was pulling me further away from dogma, even though I didn't really realize it at the time. Because one of the interesting things about that original church too was that we attracted people who were not Christians and had no intention of being Christians.
Yeah.
And they came, and I'm obviously trying to evangelize them and convert them and everything, and they just were amazing good people
Yeah.
and loved other amazing good people who were focused on good things.
Yeah.
And 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 I had this internal conflict at the time of, I'm like, okay, what am I supposed to do with these people who are here? Like,
Hmm.
Do I tell them they need to go somewhere else, or no? I mean, obviously you don't do that. They should stay and they should keep hearing the word, and and maybe God will save them. And but then I'm also
Right.
building these strong relationships with them, and man, we have so much in common, and they have the same heart, and they care about the same things, and they have legitimate questions, and they don't
So you
necessarily
were
have
you
all the
were you
same.
were you were able to connect with people on a relational, emotional level beyond looking at them as just a project for you to accomplish.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Like
that's important.
I know I had the form always of, because that was the mold that I grew up in. That this was the structure that I knew to express this thing, But like, I don't think I think the whole calling of a pastor, or whatever you want to call it, it's a much deeper thing, and that's just how we interpret it, and that's, what I'm saying. Like, if you're one of those empathetic, God focused, really like compassionate kinds of people,
Yeah.
what you end up doing is probably going to be a lot more dependent on your background and how you were raised than anything else. Maybe you're going to be a social worker, maybe you're going to be a doctor. But I think that there's a lot of people who just have that, whatever that is.
Yeah.
I want to make a difference. I care about people, and I'm really genuine about it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so
And,
that
and
was the
that's I think that's essential, for being a shepherd, a spiritual shepherd, a spiritual mentor. It's got to be genuine. It can't be like Gardner, who was trying to build his own
yeah
empire,
yeah.
perhaps. You have to.
If you're on a genuine spiritual journey, you're always going to bring people with you, because it's
Yeah,
never,
absolutely.
you intrinsically know it, that this is whatever this is that I'm tapping into, and that's feeding me and helping me to grow. It's not meant to be just for me. This is for everybody.
Hmm.
So I think that, yeah, that comes out in a million different ways, just with people and their backgrounds. So I'm doing that. That's where, what's going on in that first church, and really then all of these other very dogmatic reformed people from David Barcelo's group, and others, they start getting attracted to what's going on. And at first they're very dismissive and very condescending. It was like, okay, what's this goofy, like, half charismatic? It's how they looked at me. It was like a half charismatic, because I wasn't refined and polished and reformed in the way that they were. And I didn't accept, like, I remember it was always this big fight. They just couldn't handle it, that I had an issue with at the time, limited atonement. That was one of the stickier ones for me. That was just like, I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced. And
Hmm.
they did not like that. It was a personal challenge. Like, even all the people in their church, whenever I would visit it, that's all they wanted to talk to me about was, okay, you're close, you're almost there. You're a four. There's no such thing as a 4 point Calvinist, Scott. You can't be. You can't be this. You can't do that. You can't be a 4 point Calvinist. No, you have to be this. You have to be five.
Yeah.
So, you know, but then as the thing grows, and again, it was so organic and it was so genuine and loving, that it started attracting their people. It started pulling in their people who were like on the periphery, but they're so cultish though, that they know they can't go anywhere else that doesn't have sana doctrina, that doesn't have, well, that's what they
Well, and
call reformed
and
theology.
that's the thing, and this is, I think, a great spot to caveat your story and point out for Christians listening to this is like, and we talked about this the other day about the concentric circles, and
Mm,
you know, I can look at someone who is not reformed, they're not Calvinistic in their soteriology, but they're a Christian person or pastor or whatever. They're trying to be faithful to preach the gospel, and look at them and be like, wow, that's great. I appreciate what they're doing. We don't line up on everything, but we line up on the person and work of Christ. And again, we might disagree on how it all plays out, me and this other Christian person I'm making up, but I'm not going to I'm not going to create a conflict with them over it unless they're coming to me and asking me to explain to them why I believe what I believe. Like I
Hmm.
wouldn't be critical of them necessarily unless I thought something in their doctrine was genuinely hurting the church. Because I don't think you have to be a Calvinist to be a Christian. You don't have to be. Um, and I know a lot of Reformed people.
Yep,
I
and
mean,
I'm at the point of I don't think you have to be a Christian to be a to be a follower of God. In
well,
the
as I say,
same
a
vein.
lot of Reformed people are just so they're just nasty about it. Um,
Oh yeah,
and
absolutely. But it's a human nature thing, like we talked about. It's not a Calvinist thing. It's not an IFB
yeah,
thing. It's a human nature thing.
hmm
So people, I think we're seeing naturally just that. Oh my gosh, this is attractive. This is real. This is warm. And there's enough of the what I've been programmed to say these things have to be there. It kind of met their minimum threshold, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
so they started kind of filtering into the church, but then that changed the whole dynamic of the church. And then
hmm
it was just this pressure constantly to be more like what they came from. And
hmm
I felt as a young pastor, man, I felt that pressure like crazy.
yeah, for sure.
And then along those lines, Javier Perez, who I'm sure you know Javier, he was from David Barcelo's church, and he was a preacher but without a pulpit.
Okay.
And he, at the time, naive me, I thought he just wanted to be my friend, and we had a real connection. And he was one of those people that this guy just wanted a pulpit. He just wanted a pulpit, and I knew that he wanted a pulpit. And so we built this relationship, and I'm like, hey, I'm not going to poach you from that church. He's like, no, there's no poaching. Like, they're not giving me a chance to preach. They're not. I have this calling to be a pastor and everything. And so I had this meeting even with his pastor, and he gave his blessing. Yes, you can go and we can have you can go be an elder and a pastor up there in that church. And from then on, it was his way. It was his way. It was because he came in both guns blazing, and I wasn't ready for it. Of like
He was
we are
older than
now.
you. He was older than you.
He was old. He was older than me. Yeah.
Yeah.
He
So he came in.
basically took over the church.
Uh, yeah, you kind of
Yeah.
brought him in good faith, thinking he's going to be helpful, but he
But
kind of took control.
I can't just blame him because honestly, at that time, this was toward the end, but right before my big break, really from organized religion. I had so much cognitive dissonance that was bubbling up that I was trying to push down unsuccessfully. I was very disillusioned at this point with the whole project,
Okay.
with my theological framework. It wasn't satisfying. Uh, I had gone deep enough theologically that I could, like I said before, I had a systematic theology that on paper worked. It worked. Like there were some gaps here and there where you got to plug with some mystery, but overall, it's like no, I've kind of, but coming to the end of that was so disheartening because it didn't take me anywhere that actually was nourishing my soul. It wasn't. I still have my relationship with God that never changed, but the system was not. It was not satisfying at all, and I was struggling to understand why. So when I brought him in, that's where I was. I'm like, why is it not working? Why? What is missing? But there were no more rabbit holes to go down. There were no new doctrines to learn. It and once I got to that point of like, okay, this is okay. I can dissect an R.C. Sproul book, like, and I understand absolutely everything. Like, I'm teaching college courses on this. Like, I'm helping write books on theology, and for some reason, it's just not. This is not what I thought it was going to be, and it took me to places too, especially with Reformed theology, that it did not sit right with my spirit at all. And I'm like, but I can't
Yeah.
go back because as long as I'm holding on to scriptural inerrancy, you can't unsee what you've seen. It's not like I can go, oh, okay, I'm gonna go back to being a whatever. No, you can't. You can't, like,
Yeah.
because that would be
Yeah.
inconsistent. So I was
Right.
fast approaching that breaking point without really even knowing it.
Let me
Um,
ask you a question if I
I'm gonna grab
can.
my charger
Oh yeah.
and a quick restroom break, and I'll be right
Yeah,
back.
yeah, yeah.
Sorry, and
Okay.
then
Yeah,
then
go
just
ahead.
hit. But hold the question.
Okay.
Okay, sorry.
Feel better?
Yes. All right. So let's go with. I have a question.
So, in this whole time when you had what was his name again? Javier?
Javier. Yeah.
Yeah, when he came from Barcelo's church to come help you. So, and you still kind of felt this sense of internally being unsatisfied with where you were at,
The
perhaps
more
spirit.
dogmatic I got, the less happy I got. I'll put it
Okay,
that way.
sure, sure. Do you do you think that perhaps maybe that lack of satisfaction in that time, because by all practical metrics you were successful, um
Oh yeah.
with the church growth and financially and that kind of thing.
Oh no, nobody could believe I was the superstar.
You were a
In a lot of
wunderkind.
circles.
You
I
were
was
a
the Wunderkind,
wunderkind.
yeah. No, yeah,
Duh.
and I had gone with this
Yeah.
crazy enthusiasm of telling people I don't care if it's a missionary graveyard, I'm gonna get it done, and somehow it
Yeah.
happened. So I'm
So,
sitting on riding that high, supposedly.
but do you think that, perhaps even in your zeal to do those things in such a difficult area, um, that maybe the lack of satisfaction was coming from, there's maybe two different ways I'm going to go with this, right? The lack of satisfaction, number one, on a earthly level, was coming because you did not have a healthy relationship with that older masculine figure, right? Like this older mentor figure in the faith, um, but also perhaps God had become more of an intellectual exercise that you just had to master, in your mind, and your heart was left dry and empty because of it.
Um, there's some truth to that. I won't say that there's no truth to that. It
Because it's
was
kind of like a two-part question, really.
Yeah, so I would say the first one, not really, not really. I still have my dad, and my dad. That was what really irked Austin Gardner the most, was that my dad always was my dad,
So
and
you
he
weren't
was a very
functioning.
good
Yeah, well, and that's wonderful because
he was a
you
very good
weren't
mentor
functioning.
spiritually.
Okay, so you weren't functioning
Um,
as a lost boy mentality from the other guys that
no,
surrounded Austin. Okay,
no. I had
okay,
gone through that phase, for like a couple of years,
yeah,
to where I was, okay, this guy is going to be my new thing, and but I had quickly,
gotten over
outgrown that.
that. Yeah,
Yeah,
so then it would lead my to the second part of my question is had God become
yeah.
more of an intellectual exercise and less
Not to
of
me,
a relational
not to
being?
me personally, not to me personally.
Uh,
It was a weird dichotomy of what was going on because, on the one hand, I felt, and as I was right on the precipice of going through the biggest wilderness of my life, I was about to crash in some incredible ways, but I felt this dichotomy at the time of, on one hand, I felt very close to God and I felt very comforted by God, that the the voice of God was speaking to me, eh, to my heart, always telling me this is the, and I had a premonition sort of feeling.
uh,
I knew the House of Cards was going to come tumbling down. I knew it.
in your
I was
personal
scared.
life, you mean like in your personal life?
It was. I'll tell you what. I'll get real charismatic with you. All right.
That's okay.
During
I'm
this
there.
time.
I'm
Okay.
there.
All right. During this time, right before the end, I remember taking my kids to this little park in downtown Barcelona, and they have these swings and things, and I'm playing with them, but it looks out over the beach, and I'm looking over the beach, and I see these dark storm clouds rolling in,
Uh huh.
and in that moment, I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt, I knew with certainty from the voice of God, I knew what that storm was, and I knew it was all about to come crashing down. And but at the same time, I felt this. I felt like I was being held. It was this feeling of it's gonna be okay.
Uh huh.
It was really gonna hurt, but it's gonna be okay. And this was right before the Job years started, man. And but
Okay.
I that faith and that presence was there. So that no, there was no disconnect with the heart of God. And that's the thing that everyone assumes, because I know that happens to people. That does
Yeah.
happen. I get that. But at the same time, I have that faith and I have that experience with God going on, but I'm more and more disillusioned with the structure. I'm disillusioned with the people. I'm disillusioned with the lack of the true fruits of the spirit that should be coming, and I was seeing it in the congregation, that the more dogmatic things got and the more certain that we got and the more correct that we got, the less loving and the less whatever that was, that real thing that we had, it was dying on the vine. And
Hmm.
I knew it was the dogma. I knew it was. And but I
And
didn't feel at the time.
when you say dogma, what do you mean by that?
To me, and we're going to disagree, to me the opposite of faith is not doubt. I believe the opposite of faith is certainty. You don't need faith if you have certainty.
Well, sure, but
And
certainty about what though?
how about all of it? Let's start with that. All of
Uh
it.
huh.
I don't
But
think
like,
that,
was
and
there
this
a
is where we're going to
specific
start getting.
thing? Was there a specific
Oh,
dogma
there were there
piece?
were there were there were lots of specifics, lots of specifics. I
Uh huh.
remember, as an example, I was counseling this young kid,
Uh
16
huh.
years old, in the youth group in the church,
Okay.
and he's just in my office, just weeping, just broken, 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 and he was gay, and he
Mm.
did not want to be gay. He felt so shameful and horrible, and I had tried everything to make this go away, and he didn't
Uh
know what
huh.
to do. And I remember sitting. This is again right before the end. I remember sitting there in my office with him in that church in Sabadell, and him looking at me with tears in his eyes and saying, "Pastor, what do I do? What do I
Hmm.
do?" And I told him what came out of the heart, and it was one of the moments where I broke through the cognitive dissonance.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know what the result of it was going to be, but I told him, I said, God made you exactly how you are. You are what you're supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
And there's not a damn thing wrong with you. Um, you are a normal human being who is looking for connection and for love, and there's nothing. And he goes, but Pastor, what does that mean? And I just looked at him. I'm like, I don't know. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. And he's like, but that would mean that I'm like, I know the thread that I'm pulling on the sweater, and I know the danger of how this can unravel. But I had gotten to the point of saying, my heart says no, and my heart is right with God, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to do anything. I don't care how many scripture verses you throw at me at this point. I'm fed up with it. I'm done with it, and I'm going to follow the love that God has put in my heart.
Mm-hmm.
So, and there were a lot of moments like that.
So you would say, let me see if I can steel man what you're saying here. Okay, I want
Yeah.
to make sure I understand. So you're saying that the tensions that you felt with the people that you were connected to, right? Like in this story of this 16-year-old boy, for example, struggling through something, uh, and this tension that you felt while he's, asking for help, that kind of thing, that dealing with those tensions led you to conclude that what you sensed was where you like your how do I put this? Your sensation in your heart towards this young man, for example, was where you anchored your moral authority and not in the inerrancy of
Nope.
Scripture, for example.
Nope.
Well,
Um.
explain it to me again. Maybe I'm not understanding.
Well, no, I know where you're going with it. And I see the thought process.
Uh,
It's the difference is, how do I put it?
like, did the
It was
decision to say, like, okay, I can't trust the inerrancy of Scripture happen after the tension came
no,
in
no, no.
relation with the
You you
dogma?
you you are no you are in a sense right. You are in a sense right that there is an experiential authority that I absolutely made a choice to follow instead. And yes, and so that reveals a very different concept of inspiration. That is inspiration internal or is it external?
Uh-huh.
And what I've come to believe is that it's absolutely internal. I think that is what inspiration is, and that and relying on any person or single book or set of scriptures is some it's scaffolding and it's great religious instruction that introduces you to God,
Yeah.
but it's not meant to be. It's never. It's someone else's. You're relying on someone else's experience and someone else's inspiration and their journey with God, and it can help you, and it has a lot of benefit. Of course, I love the Bible. I really believe I love the Bible more than I ever did as a pastor, but I had to I had to stop worshiping it, and I do absolutely believe that Christians worship the Bible.
Hmm. So
Yeah.
where would you
So
say, like, and this is maybe is a great segue. I mean, if you have more, I want to hear the rest of your journey, but you
yeah.
know, if that be the case, and I understand, there you have the extremists on the one end who are like, well, the King James only situation, and then you've got the other end of the spectrum, and people in between. But when it comes to the inerrancy question, I mean, and again, maybe we don't even have to. I don't even want to necessarily. We can talk about the Bible being inerrant. That's maybe a separate conversation. But
That's a
I
long
would,
one.
well, sure. But my question to you would be then, where would you anchor your moral authority beyond? Because earlier you said, we have to anchor it in something that transcends humanity. But it sounds like you're anchoring it in your own experience.
Aha. Okay, because that's a very good question. I really like that you went there.
Does that make sense?
Because it does, however, there's a presupposition there. There's a
Okay.
presupposition, well, there's several, but there's a
Sure.
presupposition there that you are anchoring that question from, which is
Mm-hmm.
presupposing that that God and humans are distinct, and that they are not actually the same thing. And
Okay.
so
Oh,
when I say internal external, I yeah, this is, I don't know if you want to deep dive into this now, or you want me to keep going with other stuff, with personal history, because I'm about
no,
to
I mean,
jump
no,
right
really.
down into.
No, that's fine. Like it sounds like maybe in that moment that culminated. Like, what year did you come back to the U.S. in
2018.
2018? So maybe like in that year perhaps was the hinge pin, the turning point for you.
Oh, well,
And
I'll tell you what the
story
turning
of the
point.
boy was just like an example of what you were dealing with on a larger scale.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
And I can, if you want me to go into the actual break, I can try to, put that in resumen, like briefly, if you want.
Yeah. Please, seriously,
Um,
I'd love to hear it.